courtroom in Lower Manhattan smelled of stale coffee and old mahogany, but to Marcus Sterling it smelled like victory. He adjusted his $5,000 Tom Ford suit, smirking at the woman sitting across the aisle. Noah, his ex-wife. She was wearing the same grey cardigan she'd worn for the last 3 years, looking small, defeated, and utterly penniless. Marcus's new fiancée, Jessica, giggled beside him, whispering loud enough for the back row to hear, "Look at her, she looks like the help." They thought this was the end, a quick settlement to discard a useless housewife. They didn't know that the woman in the grey cardigan wasn't just silent because she was scared. She was silent because she was waiting, and the document resting in her battered tote bag wasn't a plea for mercy. It was the deed to the very ground they were standing on. The Honorable Judge Harold Vance, no relation. A bitter irony Noah had noted privately slammed his gavel, though the noise in courtroom 304 was purely one-sided. It was the sound of the Sterling family laughing. "Order," the judge mumbled, looking over his spectacles. He looked bored. Divorce cases were usually tedious, but the dissolution of the marriage between Marcus Sterling, New York's rising star architect, and Noah Sterling, a woman who, according to the court filings, contributed 0 financial assets to the marital union, was shaping up to be a public execution. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, checking his watch. A Patek Philippe Nautilus. He made sure the light caught the dial so Noah could see it. "Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer began. He was also Marcus's father, Richard Sterling, a man whose reputation in divorce court was akin to a shark in a kiddie pool. "My client is being incredibly generous. We are offering Ms. Noah a lump sum of $20,000. That is more than enough for her to restart her life. Somewhere appropriate. Perhaps in Jersey." Jessica, sitting in the gallery directly behind Marcus, covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. She was 24, a junior interior designer at Marcus's firm, and currently wearing a diamond ring that cost more than the house Noah grew up in. Noah sat alone at her table. She didn't have a high-powered team. She had a court-appointed representative, a young man named David Chen, who looked like he had graduated law school about 15 minutes ago. David was sweating. He shuffled his papers, looking at Noah with pity. "Mrs. Sterling," David whispered, his voice trembling, "take the 20,000. If we fight this, they'll bury you. They have forensic accountants. They have records showing you haven't earned a paycheck in 7 years. They're arguing you were a financial burden." Noah didn't look at David. She was looking at Marcus. She remembered the day they met. He was a struggling student, drowning in debt, unable to afford the software licenses he needed to finish his thesis. She had been working 2 waitressing jobs. She paid his rent. She paid for his food. She paid for the software. When he launched Sterling Architects, she managed the books from their kitchen table. But that was the old Noah. The Noah they saw now was just a relic. "Mr. Sterling," the judge addressed Richard, "is the plaintiff claiming that the defendant made no contributions to the estate?" "None, Your Honor." Richard boomed, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "Noah stayed at home. She has no degree. She has no employment history. My son Marcus built his empire with his own 2 hands. He designed the Helix Tower. He secured the contracts in Dubai. Noah simply existed in the space he paid for. Frankly, asking for alimony is insulting to men who work for a living." The courtroom murmured. Marcus turned to Noah, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "Don't embarrass yourself, Elle. Just sign the papers. I'm doing you a favor. You can't afford to live in this city anyway." Noah finally moved. She reached into her bag a worn canvas tote that Jessica had mocked on Instagram earlier that morning and pulled out a single thin folder. "David," she said softly. Her voice wasn't shaking. It was terrifyingly calm. "Tell them I reject the settlement." David blinked. "Noah, please." "Tell them," she commanded. David stood up, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, my client rejects the offer." Richard Sterling laughed out loud. "Rejects it. On what grounds does she want 30,000? Let's not waste the court's time." "No." Noah spoke up. She didn't stand. She didn't need to. "I don't want 30,000. I want a full audit of Sterling Architects' financials, specifically the consulting fees paid to a shell company in the Cayman Islands named Blue Horizon." The room went dead silent. Marcus froze. The smirk vanished from his face, instantly replaced by a look of confusion, then sudden, sharp panic. He looked at his father. Richard Sterling frowned, his brow furrowing. "Objection," Richard shouted, though he didn't seem to know what he was objecting to. "Relevance. This is a simple dissolution of assets." "It is relevant," Noah said, her eyes locking onto Marcus, "because Marcus doesn't own the intellectual property for the Helix Tower. Blue Horizon does. And I want the court to determine who owns Blue Horizon." The tension in the courtroom shifted from mockery to unease. It was as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Judge Vance looked intrigued for the first time all morning. "Blue Horizon, Mr. Sterling, care to explain?" Richard Sterling was a veteran. He knew how to pivot. "Your Honor, this is a fishing expedition. My client's business structures are complex standard for high-net-worth individuals. Noah is a housewife. She doesn't understand corporate structuring. She probably heard the name while snooping through private emails." "I didn't snoop," Noah said, finally standing up. She smoothed down her grey cardigan. "I didn't need to. I wrote the code." Jessica let out a sharp, incredulous laugh from the back. "She wrote the code. She can't even figure out how to use the espresso machine." "Silence in the gallery," the judge snapped. Noah ignored the girl. She walked around the table, moving toward the center of the room. "Marcus tells everyone he designed the structural algorithms for the Helix Tower. He tells the world he's a genius. But Marcus failed remedial math in college. Twice." "Objection character assassination?" Richard roared. "Overruled," the judge said, leaning forward. "I want to hear this. You claim you wrote the code, Mrs. Sterling. 7 years ago." Noah continued, her voice gaining strength, echoing off the mahogany walls. Marcus was about to lose his first major contract. The wind load calculations were wrong. The building would have collapsed. He was crying on the bathroom floor. I sat down at his computer. I spent 3 nights fixing the parametric modeling script. I created a proprietary algorithm that automatically adjusts structural integrity based on real-time weather data. Marcus stood up, his face red. "You're lying. You typed up some emails for me. That's it. You're a secretary at best." "Am I?" Noah turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the software used by Sterling Architects is licensed from a third-party vendor, a company called Vantage Systems. Marcus pays them $2 million a year for the license." "So what?" Marcus spat. "It's a vendor. We have overhead." "David," Noah signaled to her young lawyer. "Exhibit A." David, fumbling but energized by Noah's sudden dominance, handed a document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "This is the incorporation document for Vantage Systems," Noah said. "Look at the founder." The judge adjusted his glasses. He flipped the page. He squinted. Then he looked up at Noah, then at Marcus, with a look of pure shock. "The founder is E.V. Sterling." "Noah Vance Sterling," Noah clarified. "I founded Vantage Systems 6 months before we married. I retained 100% ownership. The prenuptial agreement Marcus forced me to sign, the one his father drafted, so carefully stated that any assets acquired prior to the marriage remain the sole property of the individual. Richard Sterling's face went pale. He remembered the clause. He had put it there to protect Marcus's trust fund. He never imagined the girl from the trailer park had assets. "Wait," Marcus stammered, his arrogance crumbling like wet sand. You own the software company." "That's impossible. You shop at Goodwill." "I shop at Goodwill because I like being comfortable, Marcus," Noah said, a cold smile touching her lips. "And I let you play the big man because I loved you. I funneled the licensing fees, my money, back into your household account so you could buy your watches and your cars. I effectively paid you to be my husband." She took a step closer to him. "But then you cheated. Then you brought her," she gestured to a terrified Jessica, "into the house I paid for. And then you tried to leave me with $20,000. Noah turned back to the judge. "Since the software license for the Helix Tower and every other building Marcus has designed is up for renewal next month, Vantage Systems has decided to terminate the contract, effective immediately." "You can't do that," Marcus screamed, his voice cracking. "That shuts down the firm, that kills the projects. I have investors." "Then you better hope you have a good lawyer," Noah said calmly. "Oh, wait. You have your dad." The courtroom erupted. Reporters in the back row were frantically typing on their phones. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was the collapse of a Manhattan dynasty. But Noah wasn't done. "There is one more thing, Your Honor," Noah said. "The Blue Horizon shell company I mentioned earlier, the one Marcus has been using to hide assets." Richard Sterling wiped sweat from his forehead. "Your Honor, request a recess." "Denied," the judge barked. "Continue, Mrs. Sterling." "Marcus thought he was hiding money from me," Noah said. "He was funneling millions into Blue Horizon, thinking it was a safe haven. He didn't check the bank routing numbers carefully enough. He was depositing his hidden millions into a holding account managed by Vantage Systems." The twist hung in the air. "He didn't steal the money from me," Noah whispered, the sound carrying to every corner of the room. "He gifted it to me." Marcus sank into his chair, his legs giving out. Jessica looked at him with disgust, slowly sliding her hand away from his arm. "It seems," Judge Vance said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, "that the plaintiff has significantly underestimated the defendant. Mr. Sterling, if your firm loses its software license, what is the valuation of your company?" "Zero," Marcus whispered. It's nothing without the IP." "Then we have a problem," the judge said, "because we are here to divide assets, and it appears Mrs. Sterling holds all of them." The double doors of courtroom 304 burst open, and Marcus Sterling stumbled out, as if he had been physically shoved. He wasn't, of course. The weight crushing him was entirely invisible. Flashbulbs popped instantly. The press had smelled blood. In New York City, the fall of a titan was always more newsworthy than the rise of one. "Mr. Sterling, is it true you don't own your own company's IP? Marcus. Is the firm insolvent? Who is the mystery billionaire ex-wife?" Marcus shielded his eyes, his face a mask of sweaty panic. Richard Sterling, usually the bulldog who commanded the press with a single glare, looked old and grey. He was trying to push through the crowd, barking, "No comment, no comment." Jessica, the fiancée who had been giggling an hour ago, was now walking 3 feet behind Marcus, her head down, furiously texting. She wasn't texting him. She was texting her landlord to see if she could get her old apartment back. Then the doors opened again. Silence rippled through the hallway, starting from the front and moving back like a wave. Noah stepped out. She hadn't changed clothes. She was still in the grey cardigan and simple slacks, but she looked different. It was the posture. She walked with the easy, terrifying confidence of a woman who held the detonator. "Noah, Noah." The reporters swarmed microphones thrust into her face. "Mrs. Sterling, is it true you control Vantage Systems?" Noah stopped. She looked at the cameras. Then her eyes drifted to Marcus, who was pinned against the wall by the crush of bodies. "It's Miss Vance," she said, her voice clear and melodic. "Sterling was just a consulting brand I invested in. A failed investment, it seems." Marcus snapped. He shoved a cameraman aside and lunged toward her. "You planned this, you cold-hearted witch. You set me up." Richard grabbed his son's arm, holding him back. "Marcus, shut up, you're making it worse." "She deceived me," Marcus screamed, spit flying. "She pretended to be poor. That's fraud, that's entrapment." Noah didn't flinch. She just tilted her head. "I didn't pretend to be poor, Marcus. I just didn't feel the need to buy validation. You spent 3 years telling me I was worthless because I didn't bring home a paycheck. I was testing you. I wanted to see if you loved me or the lifestyle. I got my answer when you moved Jessica into our bedroom while I was visiting my dying mother." The crowd gasped. Jessica shrank further into her coat. "You're finished," Marcus hissed. "I'll sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. Mr. Sterling." A deep baritone voice cut through the noise like a serrated knife. Everyone turned. Standing near the elevators was a man who made Marcus look like a boy playing dress-up. He was tall, wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than a mid-sized sedan. He had silver-streaked black hair and eyes that were dark, intelligent, and predatory. Julian Thorne, the CIO of Thorne Capital. He was a corporate raider, a man known for buying distressed companies, gutting them and selling the scraps. He was also Richard Sterling's sworn enemy. 20 years ago, Richard had used a legal loophole to cheat Julian out of a property deal in Tribeca. Julian never forgot. "Julian," Richard said, his voice trembling slightly. "This is a private family matter." "Not anymore," Julian said, stepping forward. The reporters parted for him like the Red Sea. He walked straight to Noah, ignoring the Sterlings completely. "Miss Vance," Julian said, offering a hand. "I've been following the market fluctuations on Vantage Systems all morning. Brilliant maneuver with the shell company routing. Truly inspired." Noah looked at him warily. She knew who he was. "Mr. Thorne, to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'm here to make an offer," Julian said loud enough for Marcus to hear. "I want to acquire the debt of Sterling Architects." Marcus's eyes widened. "We don't have debt. We have a liquidity issue." "You have a judgment coming?" Julian corrected, glancing at Marcus with amusement. "And once Ms. Vance pulls the software license, you will be in breach of contract on the Helix Tower, the Dubai project, and the stadium in Atlanta. The penalties will bankrupt you by Friday. I'm offering to buy the carcass of your firm." He turned back to Noah. "However, I can't do it without the software. I'd like to discuss a partnership. Thorne Capital provides the legal muscle to crush any countersuits these two clowns throw at you, and Vantage Systems provides the tech." "You want to partner with her?" Richard sputtered. "She's a housewife. She's the majority shareholder of the company, holding your leash, Richard." Julian smiled thinly. "And frankly, she seems to have more business acumen in her little finger than your son has in his entire overpriced education." Noah looked at Julian, then at Marcus. She saw the fear in her ex-husband's eyes. It wasn't just fear of poverty. It was the fear of irrelevance. "I have a car waiting," Julian said to Noah. "We can discuss the terms over lunch, unless you'd rather stay here and listen to your ex-husband scream." Noah adjusted her tote bag. She looked at Marcus one last time. "Goodbye, Marcus. Good luck with the job hunt." She took Julian's arm. As they walked toward the elevator, the flashbulbs went crazy. The headline was already writing itself: "The Billionaire Housewife and the Corporate Raider." But as the elevator doors closed, shielding them from the chaos, Julian's smile faded. He looked at Noah seriously. "You handled that well," he said. "But you need to know something. This isn't just about money anymore." "What do you mean?" Noah asked, feeling a sudden chill. "My analysts have been looking at the Blue Horizon accounts you exposed," Julian said softly. "The money Marcus was hiding wasn't just profits, it was kickbacks." Noah frowned. "Kickbacks from who?" "From a concrete supplier in New Jersey run by the mob," Julian said. "Marcus wasn't just hiding cash, Noah. He was compromising the safety of the Helix Tower to do it. If that building goes up and the materials are what I think they are, it won't stand for a year." The interior of Julian Thorne's private office in Midtown was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking Central Park. It was quiet, a stark contrast to the zoo at the courthouse. Noah sat at a conference table covered in documents. She had finally taken off the grey cardigan, revealing a simple white blouse underneath. She looked tired, but her mind was racing. "Explain it to me like I'm 5, Noah said, pointing to a spreadsheet. Julian poured her a glass of sparkling water. "It's simple. Sterling Architects is building the Helix Tower, the tallest residential building in Brooklyn. The budget for materials was massive. But looking at these transfers, Marcus switched suppliers 6 months ago. He switched to Apex Aggregates," Noah read from the sheet. "Apex is a shell," Julian explained, pacing the room. "It's a front for the Gambino family. They supply substandard concrete, cut concrete. It's cheaper, it dries faster, but it has half the tensile strength of the regulation material. Marcus paid them full price on the books, they gave him the cheap stuff, and they kicked back 40% of the cash into his Blue Horizon account." Noah felt sick. He pocketed the difference. He risked thousands of lives for, what, a few $1,000,000? $12 million to be exact, Julian said. He wanted to buy a yacht, the Jessica too. Noah closed her eyes. The pettiness of it was almost more offensive than the crime. "The Helix Tower is already 40 stories up. If the foundation is weak—" "It's a tomb," Julian said grimly. "And here is the problem, Noah. You own the software that designed it. If that building comes down, the investigation won't just look at the concrete. They'll look at the structural algorithms. Marcus will claim your code was faulty to cover his tracks. He'll frame vantage systems for the collapse." Noah stood up, her horns trembling. "He would kill people to save his reputation." "He's a sterling," Julian said, as if that explained everything. "Richard taught him well. Deny, deflect, destroy." "We have to stop construction," Noah said firmly. "We have to go to the authorities." "We can't." "Not yet," Julian warned. "If we go to the police now, Richard will bury the evidence before a warrant is signed. Apex Aggregates will vanish. The paper trail will disappear. We need hard proof. We need a sample of the concrete from the core of the building." "The site is on lockdown," Noah said. "Marcus has security everywhere." "Exactly," Julian said. "Which is why we aren't going in through the front door." Suddenly the intercom on Julian's desk buzzed. "Mr. Thorne, there is a Ms. Jessica Miller in the lobby. She says it's urgent." Noah and Julian exchanged a look. "Jessica?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "What does she want?" "Let's find out." Julian pressed the button. "Send her up." 3 minutes later, Jessica walked into the office. She looked nothing like the arrogant girl in the courtroom. Her mascara was running, her designer coat was buttoned wrong, and she was clutching her phone like a lifeline. She stopped when she saw Noah. Shame flushed her face, red and hot. I didn't know you'd be here," Jessica stammered. "Cut the act," Noah said coldly. "What do you want? Is Marcus sending you to spy?" "No." Jessica burst into tears. "He kicked me out. He blamed me for everything he said. If I hadn't posted that photo of your bag, none of this would have happened. He threw my clothes on the street." Noah didn't soften. "And you want sympathy from me?" "No," Jessica sniffled, wiping her nose. "I want revenge." She pulled a tablet out of her bag. "I was the interior designer on the Helix project. I have access to the site logs. I know when the security shift changes. And I know where Marcus keeps the physical copies of the Apex invoices. He doesn't keep them at the office." "Where are they?" Julian asked, stepping forward. "They're in the safe at the penthouse," Jessica said. "The penthouse I have a key to. He forgot to ask for it back." Noah looked at the girl. She saw a reflection of her younger self, naive, used and discarded by a narcissist. But unlike the old Noah, Jessica was vindictive. "Why help us?" Noah asked. "Because he called me the help." Jessica spat, her voice hardening. "And because I heard him on the phone with his dad. They're planning to pour the 50th floor tomorrow. A celebration pour. The press will be there. They want to rush the completion before anyone looks too closely at the books." "If they pour the 50th floor on that foundation," Julian murmured, looking at the schematics, "the added weight could trigger a shear failure immediately." "Disaster," Noah whispered. "We have to get into that penthouse," Julian said. "Tonight." "I can get you in," Jessica said. "But Marcus is paranoid. He has a private security detail guarding the lobby. We need a distraction." Noah walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. She felt a fire rising in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the player. "I'll be the distraction," Noah said, turning around. A dangerous smile played on her lips. "Marcus thinks I'm a scorned woman who wants money. Let's give him a show. I'm going to crash his victory dinner at Le Bernardin tonight." "He'll have you arrested," Jessica warned. "Let him try," Noah said. "While he's busy screaming at me in front of New York's elite, you and Julian go to the penthouse, get the invoices, get the concrete samples." Julian looked at her with newfound respect. "Noah, this is dangerous. If Richard catches wind of this—" "Richard Sterling took 7 years of my life," Noah said, picking up her battered tote bag. "I'm going to take his whole world." Le Bernardin was the kind of restaurant where the clinking of silverware sounded like polite applause. It was a sanctuary for the Manhattan elite, a place where deals were sealed over foie gras and vintage Bordeaux. Tonight, Table 4 was the center of attention. Marcus Sterling was drunk. Not stumbling drunk, but the kind of loud, expansive drunk that comes from thinking you've dodged a bullet. He was holding court with 3 potential investors and his father Richard. "The Helix Tower isn't just a building," Marcus slurred, slightly raising his glass. "It's a legacy. Tomorrow we pour the 50th floor. We touch the sky. And despite the hiccup, in court today, Sterling Architects is stronger than ever." Richard Sterling didn't look as festive. He was sipping his water, his eyes darting around the room. He had a bad feeling. The sudden appearance of Julian Thorne at the courthouse had rattled him. Thorne didn't back losers. If he was siding with Noah, he knew something. "Dad, relax." Marcus laughed, slapping his father on the back. "We have the new suppliers. The margins are incredible. We're going to net 40 million on this project alone." "Keep your voice down," Richard hissed. "You don't talk about margins in public." "Why not?" Marcus grinned. "Who's going to stop us, the librarian?" At that moment, the maître d' approached the table. He looked terrified. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling," he whispered. We have an additional guest for your party." "I didn't invite anyone," Marcus snapped. "I did," a voice said. Marcus froze. He turned around. Standing there was Noah. But it wasn't the Noah from the courtroom. The grey cardigan was gone. She was wearing a midnight blue silk gown that hugged her frame, elegant and commanding. She wore no jewelry except for a simple, terrifyingly expensive watch, a vintage Cartier tank. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders in waves. She didn't look like a librarian. She looked like a CIO. "Noah." Marcus blinked, his mouth hanging open. "What are you doing here? You can't afford a salad in this place." "I bought the table next to you," Noah said, coolly, signaling the waiter. "But I thought I'd come over and say hello. I hear we're celebrating." She pulled up a chair and sat down, right between Marcus and his biggest investor, a man named Mr. Henderson. "Get out," Richard snarled. "I'll call security." "Go ahead," Noah said, pouring herself a glass of water from their carafe. "Mr. Henderson, I assume Marcus told you about the new efficiencies in the construction budget." Mr. Henderson, a heavy-set man with a white mustache, frowned. He mentioned cost-saving measures, standard optimization. "Is that what they call it?" Noah smiled sweetly at Marcus. "I call it apex aggregates." Marcus dropped his fork. It hit the china with a loud clang. "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus stammered. "Oh, I think you do," Noah continued, her voice level, but carrying a dangerous weight. "Apex Aggregates, the supplier out of Newark, the one that doesn't have a website, the one that delivers at 3 Seoul a.m. Richard stood up abruptly. "That is enough. You are breaching confidentiality agreements. You are liable for slander." "I'm just making conversation." "Richard," Noah said, leaning back. "I'm curious, Mr. Henderson. Did you know that the concrete mix being used on the Helix Tower has a curing time of 12 hours? Standard regulation is 48. "Is that true?" Henderson asked, looking at Richard. "You told me you were using Grade A Portland mix." "We are." Richard lied, his face turning purple. "She's crazy. She's a bitter ex-wife, trying to sabotage the project, because she didn't get a payout." "Am I?" Noah checked her watch. It was 8:15 p.m. Julian and Jessica should be in the penthouse by now. She needed to keep them talking. "Then why don't you show Mr. Henderson the invoices? They're public record, aren't they?" "This is harassment," Marcus yelled. People at nearby tables were staring. "You're jealous. You're jealous because I built something real, and you're just a coder. I built the brain of that tower, Marcus," Noah said, her eyes flashing. "And you're giving it a heart of sand. When that building falls, it won't just be my code that gets blamed. It'll be your name, and yours, Mr. Henderson, for funding it." Henderson stood up. "I think I've lost my appetite. Richard, I want a full independent audit of the materials by tomorrow morning, or I pull my funding." "You can't do that," Marcus cried, grabbing Henderson's arm. "We pour tomorrow. Get off me." Henderson shook him off and stormed out. The other investors followed suit, leaving Marcus and Richard alone with Noah. The victory dinner had turned into a wake. Richard slowly sat back down. He stared at Noah with cold, reptilian eyes. He wasn't looking at her like a nuisance anymore. He was looking at her like a threat that needed to be neutralized. "You're playing a dangerous game, Noah," Richard said softly. "You think Julian Thorne can protect you? He's a shark. He'll eat you when he's done with you." "Better a shark than a snake," Noah retorted. "You know too much," Richard murmured, pulling out his phone. "How do you know about Apex? That's not in the public records." Noah's heart skipped a beat. She had overplayed her hand. "I have eyes," she said. "No." Richard said, a realization dawning on his face. He looked at his phone, then at Marcus. "Where is Jessica?" "Jessica." Marcus looked confused. "I threw her out. Who cares?" "She has a key," Richard whispered. His face went pale. "She has a key to the penthouse, and the Apex invoices are in your safe." Richard slammed his hand on the table, knocking over a wine glass. "It's a diversion. She's not here to talk. She's keeping us here." He grabbed Marcus by the collar. "Call the security detail at the penthouse. Now tell them to sweep the apartment." Noah stood up, her pulse racing. "Going somewhere." "You." Richard pointed a shaking finger at her. "If they touch those papers, you won't live to see the trial." He and Marcus sprinted toward the exit. Noah grabbed her phone and dialed Julian. "Pick up. Pick up. Pick up." 40 blocks uptown. The silence in Marcus's penthouse was heavy. It was a sprawling triplex overlooking the Hudson River, filled with modern art and furniture that looked uncomfortable to sit on. Jessica moved through the dark hallway, her hands trembling. Julian Thorne was right behind her, moving with the silent grace of a panther. "The safe is in the master closet," Jessica whispered. "Behind the mirror." "Lead the way," Julian said. He wasn't looking at the art. He was checking the corners, watching the shadows. They reached the bedroom. It smelled of Marcus's cologne, an overpowering musk that made Jessica gag. She walked to the walk-in closet, pushed aside a rack of Italian suits, and pressed a hidden latch on the full-length mirror. It swung open. A heavy steel wall safe was revealed. "Do you know the code?" Julian asked. "It used to be his birthday," Jessica said. She punched in the numbers. Error. "He changed it." She panicked. "Oh God, he changed it." "Think," Julian said calmly. "Marcus is a narcissist. It has to be something about him. What does he love most? Himself?" Jessica guessed. "Money, the Helix Tower," Julian said. "When did he break ground, or the height?" The height, Jessica realized. He talks about it constantly. 250 feet. She typed 1250. Click. The light turned green. "Got it," Jessica breathed, pulling the heavy door open. Inside, stacked neatly, were piles of cash and a thick black binder. Jessica grabbed the binder and opened it. Apex aggregates. Invoice. 4. Material subgrade filler. Cash on delivery. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the smoking gun." "Good," Julian said. "Take it. Let's go." Suddenly, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A text from Noah. "They know. Run." "We have company," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. "Move." They turned to leave the closet, but it was too late. The lights in the bedroom flickered on. Standing in the doorway were 2 men. They weren't police. They were wearing cheap leather jackets and had the thick, broken-nosed look of men who hurt people for a living. One of them was holding a silenced pistol. "Mr. Sterling said we might have rats," the man with the gun said. He had a thick Jersey accent. "Didn't expect the rat to be so pretty." Jessica froze, clutching the binder to her chest. "Put the book down," the gunman ordered. Julian stepped in front of Jessica. He held his hands up, palms open, but his stance shifted. His weight dropped. He wasn't surrendering. He was preparing. "Gentlemen," Julian said smoothly, "I'm Julian Thorne. Whatever Sterling is paying you, I'll double it. Walk away." The gunman laughed. "Thorne, huh, the billionaire. The boss said you might be trouble. Said we should make it look like a robbery gone wrong." "Jessica," Julian whispered, not moving his lips. "When I move, you run. Don't look back. Take the service elevator." I can't leave you," she whimpered. "Go." The gunman raised the pistol. "Say good night." Julian moved. He didn't move away from the gun. He moved into it. In a blur of motion, he slapped the barrel aside with his left hand while driving his right palm into the man's chin. There was a sickening crunch. The gun went off the bullet, shattering the mirror behind them, sending glass raining down. The gunman stumbled back, dropping the weapon. "Run!" Julian roared. Jessica bolted. The second goon lunged for her, but Julian was a whirlwind. He kicked the man's knee, hyperextending it with a snap, then spun around and threw an elbow into the man's temple. Julian Thorne wasn't just a corporate raider. He had spent 3 years in the French Foreign Legion before Wall Street. He knew how to fight dirty, but the first gunman was getting up. He scrambled for the pistol on the floor. Julian dived. He tackled the man, slamming him into the expensive dresser. They grappled for the gun. The gunman was strong, fueled by adrenaline. He landed a heavy punch to Julian's ribs. Julian grunted, tasting blood. Jessica was at the bedroom door. She looked back. Julian was pinned. The gun was inches from his face. She looked at the heavy marble statue on the console table next to her. A bust of Marcus. She grabbed it. It was heavy, solid bronze. She ran back in. "Hey!" she screamed. The gunman looked up. Jessica swung the bust of Marcus with both hands, bringing it down on the gunman's head. Thud! The man collapsed instantly unconscious. Julian shoved the body off him and gasped for air. He looked at Jessica, then at the bust of Marcus on the floor, now dented. "Poetic justice!" Julian wheezed, wiping blood from his lip. Is he dead?" Jessica asked, shaking. "Just sleeping." Julian struggled to his feet. He grabbed the binder. "But his friends won't be far behind. We have to go. Now!" They sprinted out of the apartment, bypassing the main elevators and heading for the service stairwell. As they burst out into the alleyway behind the building, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police. "Did you call them?" Jessica asked. "No," Julian said, checking his phone. "Noah did." A black SUV screeched to a halt at the end of the alley. The window rolled down. Noah was in the driver's seat. "Get in!" she screamed. Julian and Jessica threw themselves into the back seat. Noah floored the gas just as a black sedan. Richard Sterling's car turned the corner, blocking the other end of the alley. "Hold on!" Noah yelled. She hopped the curb, scraping the side of the SUV against a dumpster, and sped onto the main road, weaving through traffic. "Did you get it?" Noah shouted over her shoulder. Jessica held up the black binder. "We got it. Are you okay?" Noah looked in the rearview mirror. She saw Julian's bruised face and the blood on his shirt. Her eyes widened. "Julian, I'm fine," Julian said, leaning back and closing his eyes. "Just a contract negotiation. But Noah, we have a problem." "What?" "The last page of the binder," Julian said, opening his eyes. "I saw it before we left. It's not just invoices." "What is it?" "It's an email," Julian said grimly. "From the mayor's office, confirming the inspection for tomorrow morning has been pre-approved, regardless of the pour." Noah gripped the steering wheel. "The corruption goes to the mayor." "It goes all the way up," Julian said. "If we take this to the police, it disappears. If we take it to the press, they bury it." "So what do we do?" Jessica cried. "We have the proof, but we can't use it." Noah stared at the road ahead. The skyline of New York glittered before them, the skeleton of the Helix Tower rising like a dark omen in the distance. "We don't give it to the police," Noah said, her voice turning hard. "And we don't give it to the press." "Then who?" "We give it to the one group of people Richard Sterling can't bribe," Noah said. "The workers." The sun was just beginning to rise over the East River, casting a blood-red hue against the steel skeleton of the Helix Tower. It was 6:00 a.m. on a Friday, but the site was already buzzing. This was the Golden Pour, the 50th floor, a ceremonial milestone meant to reassure investors and the public. A podium had been erected at the base of the tower. A giant LED screen displayed a loop of the finished building, a shimmering needle of glass that looked impossible. And it was impossible, because it was a lie. Richard Sterling stood by the VIP tent, checking his watch. He looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red. He hadn't slept since the dinner. His security team had failed to find Noah or the binder. But Richard was a man who believed in momentum. If they poured the concrete today, if they cemented the structure, it would be too expensive to tear down. They could fix the cracks later. They could pay off the inspectors. They just needed to finish. "Is the mayor coming?" Marcus asked, pacing nervously. He was wearing a hard hat that looked pristine, untouched by dust. "He cancelled," Richard muttered. "Coward. But the press is here. Look confident, Marcus. This is your moment." A crowd of construction workers, 200 strong, stood near the cement mixers. They looked tired. They knew the schedule was rushed. They knew the concrete felt wrong. It was too watery, too grey. But in this economy, you didn't ask questions. You poured. "All right, listen up." The site foreman, a burly man named Big Mike, shouted over the bullhorn. "We go live in 10 minutes. I want those mixers spinning. Let's get this done." The mixers roared to life. The ground shook. Suddenly, a screech of feedback cut through the air. The giant LED screen behind the podium flickered. The loop of the beautiful tower vanished. In its place, a black screen appeared with white text, "Apex Aggregates, Invoice Dariazo 4. The roar of the mixers seemed to dampen as heads turned. "What is that?" Marcus squinted at the screen. "Turn it off, cut the feed." "I can't!" The AV technician yelled, frantically typing. "We're locked out." Then a voice boomed across the construction site, not from the podium but from the unfinished second floor of the steel structure. "Turn off the mixers." Everyone looked up. Standing on the steel beam illuminated by the rising sun was Noah. Beside her stood Julian Thorne and Jessica. Noah held a microphone she had rigged to the site's PA system. "Who the hell is that?" a reporter shouted, pointing a camera upward. "That's the ex-wife," another whispered. "Turn them off," Noah commanded, again her voice echoing like a judgment from above. "The concrete you are about to pour is grade D filler. If you pour that 50th floor, the weight will shear the support columns on floors 10 through 15. This building won't just crack, it will collapse." Richard grabbed a security guard. "Get her down, shoot her if you have to. She's trespassing." The guards moved toward the stairs, but they were blocked. A wall of men, Julian's private security detail, had quietly infiltrated the site perimeter. "You're lying!" Marcus screamed into the VIP microphone, his voice cracking. "She's crazy. She's trying to ruin me." "Am I?" Noah looked down at the workers. She locked eyes with Big Mike, the foreman. "Mike, look at the invoices on the screen. Look at the test results. 40% tensile strength. You have a crew up there right now. If that floor gives way, do you want to be the one to call their wives?" Big Mike looked at the screen. He saw the numbers. He looked at the wet grey slurry in the mixers. He had been a foreman for 30 years. He knew bad mud when he saw it. He looked at Marcus, who was sweating profusely in the morning chill. Then he looked at Richard, whose face was a mask of pure malice. Big Mike raised his hand. He made a fist. Then he drew a line across his throat. "Cut it!" Mike roared. "No!" Marcus yelled. "I pay your salary, keep pouring! I said cut it!" Mike bellowed. One by one, the drivers killed the engines. The mixers slowed to a halt. The silence that descended on the site was deafening. Richard Sterling realized it was over. He turned to run toward his limousine, but he stopped dead. Blocking his path were 3 black SUVs. The doors opened, and men in windbreakers stepped out. The letters on their jackets were unmistakable FBI. Richard Sterling, the lead agent, announced, holding up a badge. Marcus Sterling, you're under arrest for racketeering, fraud, and reckless endangerment. On whose authority? Richard spat, though his hands were shaking. On mine, a voice said from the crowd. The workers parted. Julian Thorne walked through, looking battered but triumphant. Beside him walked the district attorney. We received a very interesting binder this morning, Mr. Sterling, the DA said, along with a digital testimony from your former interior designer, Ms. Miller. It seems you kept very detailed records of your crimes. Marcus collapsed. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He just sat down in the mud and began to weep. As the agents handcuffed Marcus and Richard, the press went wild. But the cameras weren't focused on the criminals. They were focused on the woman standing on the steel beam above them. Noah looked down at the scene. She didn't feel joy. She didn't feel giddiness. She felt relief. She saw Jessica standing next to her, tears streaming down her face. Noah put a hand on the younger woman's shoulder. It's over, Noah said softly. Jessica looked at her. You saved me. After everything I did, you saved me. We saved each other, Noah said. Julian walked up the temporary stairs to join them. He stood beside Noah, looking out at the city. You realize what happens now? Julian asked. You're going to be the most famous woman in New York. The billionaire savior. I don't want to be famous, Noah said, taking off the microphone. I just want to build things that stand up. Julian smiled. He took her hand. Well, Vantage Systems is going to need a new headquarters. I know a site that just became available. It has a great view, but the foundation needs some work. Noah laughed. It was the first time she had genuinely laughed in years. I think I can handle the foundation, she said. 1 year later, the Helix Tower was never finished. The skeleton was dismantled, the steel recycled. In its place, a new structure was rising. The Vantage Center, a complex dedicated to sustainable affordable housing and a tech incubator for women in STEM. Marcus Sterling was serving a 10-year sentence in a minimum security facility upstate. He spent his days working in the library shelving books. Richard Sterling didn't fare as well. The stress of the trial caused a massive stroke. He was currently in a nursing home, unable to speak, staring out the window at a city he no longer owned. Jessica served 6 months of community service for her role in the initial cover-up, a lenient sentence thanks to her testimony. She was now studying architecture at Pratt, her tuition paid for by an anonymous scholarship fund that everyone knew came from Noah. And Noah. She was in the boardroom of the new Vantage Center. She was wearing a grey cardigan cashmere this time. The meeting is starting, Ms. Vance, her assistant said. Noah nodded. She walked into the room. At the head of the table sat Julian Thorne. He stood up when she entered. He wasn't her boss. He was her partner, in business and in life. Ready to build the future? Julian asked. Noah smiled, opening her folder. I've already written the code. And that is the incredible story of Noah Vance. From a mocked ex-wife in a grey cardigan to the billionaire hero who took down a corrupt empire. It's a powerful reminder that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's just strategy. Marcus and Richard Sterling thought they could judge Noah by her appearance, but they forgot the most important rule of all: real power doesn't need to shout. What did you think of Noah's revenge? Was it justice, or did she go too far by humiliating them publicly? And be honest if you were. Jessica, would you have turned on Marcus or run away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.